to hear. So I'm here with NaturalSky. Hopefully you all can hear him. Okay, so how are you doing, NaturalSky?
Uh, I'm doing pretty good. Had a lot of fun with this patch so far. Have not played as much as some other people, but it's been a good change. So yeah.
You haven't even one in mind when you say as other people? You say you haven't played as much as some other people, or?
It's just I've been dialing down my rivals play just a little bit. Focus more on real life stuff.
No, I hear you.
So I'm still in both pro races at the moment, but I don't think I'm gonna get the colossal crates this week.
Yeah, I'm only in one pro race, so I mean you're more ambitious than me. I feel like I can barely win one at this point. The game for me is in probably the best state it's ever been. But I've kind of reached this point where it's like, I don't really need to win the pro races anymore. I've got pretty much every card maxed, with the exception of like 5 or 6 that I'd like to run, and I'm not really in any rush to get them maxed. So
yeah, that's kind of been my take. I have all of my commons at 15 cards wise, so I don't need commons anymore at all. I have almost all my epics at max card value, and I have a few rares that I want to get that are not close to max yet, but yeah, that doesn't really incentivize me for getting 2 colossal crates.
yeah, I hear that. I think my rares, I have like 7 or 8 rares that are at 14, but they're not really close to 15, and I don't care about like 5 of them. It's like scavengers and some commanders or whatever.
Yeah, I was looking at shock troopers earlier because people are like starting to play shock trooper predator decks again. And I'm like, oh, I should be really far from shock troopers. I've never cloned them, but apparently I only need 200 more cards and I can get them to 15. So
yeah, that's really good. We'll actually look at a mock tier list I made, a mock-up tier list, and we can make fun of how far off the mark I was.
The fake blade list.
Yeah, I just made an OP trash list basically. So
That'll be someone.
Okay, so you want to dive into these patch notes here, or?
Yeah, I just because I don't think anyone has really reviewed them thoroughly yet. Because especially the Tiberium harvest change, we didn't really know what that entailed until you actually started doing the testing.
Let me bring up the diagram on the screen. We talk about that. How do you feel about the new economy changes in the game so far?
It's hard to say. I do like them. Like in general, I think being more careful with the Tiberium income you have and how you spend it, that should be a core Rivals mechanic. But I've also definitely had a few games where I really needed an obelisk of light to clear like 2 mutants and a chuggy or something like that. And I just couldn't get to it because every time I was close, I needed to build a unit to keep stalling the missile, or like contest the board to prevent my harvester from being killed. So yeah, I've definitely noticed a few things, but I do think that's partly more based on building old decks on the old econ values that don't translate well into the new ones, rather than me being bad at the game, basically.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of running into that on some level. Seems like if you wastefully use your units at all, if you're not good at preserving them, or it doesn't even have to be that you're not good at it. It's everyone makes a mistake here and there and they lose a unit. You start to fall behind, and it seems like it's a little bit more punishing in that regard because now you're down 1 unit and your opponent is ahead 1 unit, and now you can't even build a unit to replace it. So basically you're down 2 units from where you were in prior patches as the game progresses, and that can snowball even further, and it gets a lot harder to claw your way back in, and then you're just at some point you're just spamming trash units and just clawing to hold on to the missile and hope that you can flip it somehow. But
So I think one thing that probably most people aren't truly aware of, there is like when you build like a proper meta deck, there is a consideration on how you spend money on that deck during the various stages of the game. So, for example, the Viper's APC deck was probably one of the best decks of doing this because at 0 game time, you had dogs, you had Pitbull, which is very efficient, rifles, and to some extent jump as well, depending on the matchup. And then as the game time went on, you could start adding APCs or Talons or more turrets. And the deck was very good at just at every point in the game, it had a power spike, basically. But now, because of the new values, every deck will have to be reevaluated for each moment at the game to see if you can, if you have enough power in that early game. I think especially something like a bike rush deck doesn't have that anymore because you're gonna have to wait way too long to get the APC out to the point where it's probably not worth having it in the deck anymore.
yeah, I can definitely agree with that, and I feel there are a lot of mixed feelings on it. Some people really love the change, and then others they're a little bit upset about it because they feel the game is slowed down in some regards, and they're not able to. They don't feel like they're always able to be relevant in the game. Like if they make a mistake, they feel more punished, and so they're not able to be relevant into the late game if they've made such a large mistake towards the beginning.
Yeah, I think this, like I said, I think this is partly due to people still building decks based on the old economy.
Right.
Because if you have a deck that has 3 units that cost 70 Tiberium or more, if you need one of those 3 units and you don't have the money, that sucks.
Yeah.
But if you only have 1 or 2 units that are very expensive, then you have more quick answers that don't require you to have large investments.
Right. Right.
So I think people will need to, over time, just reevaluate their decks. That doesn't mean that expensive units aren't viable anymore. You just can't cram your deck full of them.
Is this the? Yes, it was. Okay. I fortunately saved this in Paint.
Nice.
But basically, when we look at these old values here, the difference in Tiberium from on single harvester is over a 4-minute game. Let's see if I can fit this whole thing on the screen. Is this working? Doesn't look like it.
The missile timing change, that was a very interesting change. That happened a long time ago, but it used to be 45, 45, 30 seconds, and then they changed it to 40, 40, 40.
Yeah.
Which it really changed how you play the game, because normally third missile was very hectic. Like the second one would fire, and you would immediately have to start throwing things at the pads again.
I think it actually fundamentally changed how everyone played the game. You would kind of be lax about the first 2 missiles, like, oh yeah, they're coming. And then even though tech was very strong on the third missile, because it fired so quickly, a lot of people you could catch them with their pants down, basically. They wouldn't expect it to fire that quickly, and if you were savvy to it, you could get some really cool flips. The game was a lot more stressful then too, just because like, how did it fire that fast? Like most people just were not expecting it. And
no, I've definitely had a few games where I just either lost or won because the missile just suddenly fired off. It's like, that didn't feel like 45. Oh, right.
Yeah. I mean, the critical timer was even shorter, right? It was like, now it's like 8 seconds or something like that. I don't know exactly how long it is. It's like 7 seconds for it to go critical. And then on the third missile, it was like 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
I think they really didn't want any like flip shenanigans. They just wanted, take control and then win.
And I think the philosophy behind it was like they just wanted the game to end, because you'd see devs like Nivmet saying that you never want to see a game drag on where no one can make any headway and the game's just dragging on and on and on. So I guess they just dialed away from it because they wanted The win condition to be more well defined for aggro decks against the more late game snowbally tech decks. But as you can see on this chart here, like I mean, over a 4-minute game, you're only down 150 Tiberium if your harvester is continuously mining, and over a 4-minute, you're going to mine out. So it would technically be 300 because it's twice as much lost. But because you mine out, it's only you're down 255 Tiberium. If you immediately blind double harv, this will be a little bit higher if you delay your second harv because you'll be getting reduced value. You'll be getting reduced increased ramp later, but you'll see somewhere between 255 and 300 lost Tiberium on that double harv. So
yeah, so I think the single harv values they aren't that much. But I think what people need to realize, if you, for example, open 2 or 3 buildings, that also cuts into your total effective Tiberium that you have to spend. So 40 Tib over 2 minutes can actually like make a difference in certain matchups.
Yeah. And a lot of people aren't also accounting for like the increased cost of old things like Strongarm up 10. That's a pretty big deal. APC up 10. A couple other units may have been adjusted. I think Catship. Nobody's really. It doesn't seem like a lot of people are running that anymore. But yeah, I think you get the point.
Yeah. So yeah, in general, I'm a fan of the economy change. Yeah, we'll really have to see over the course of the next few months how that's going to work out. But
yeah,
the change wasn't significant enough to kick tech fully out of the meta, but it also wasn't fully insane enough to completely destroy aggro decks. So it's conservative enough that I'm pretty happy with it.
I love that the change really impacted the meta overall. Personally, I'm a little bit disappointed that it didn't make the tech dynamic. You know, I kind of foresaw this. You know, I was kind of a doomsayer and like, I don't think it'll have that effect. We had a discussion back in like January of this year or something where it was like, I think people will just spam mid-range units at best. And if that's not the case, they'll still be able to get the tech out. And it's just because the economy doubles. So it's going to impact a single harv player before it's actually going to impact a double harv player because they have twice as much money to work with. And I feel like that's kind of how it's worked out. But fortunately, you can still gain enough power and advantage from like killing harvesters and using your population and getting advantageous trades where it's not too big of a deal and you can still win on the one harv and you can make a strategic decision. Okay, maybe I need to go into the double harv to take on a deck that I don't trade advantageously into. Like say you're against snipers and you know you're never going to be able to trade because you have 3 infantry that just can't push through the snipers. So all right, I'll just go double harv and then I'll play for the mid game with tank spam or something like that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to fighting tech, I haven't played that many tech games against tech games yet, but I think it's easier to win missiles now because they have less pop cap and they have less money to spend. But if you lose a missile, you are further behind because they not only do they get time, but also your single harv isn't generating as much money as it used to be. So right. Yeah, you're going to be snowballing that disadvantage further. But if you lose first missile versus a tech deck, then you generally already lose anyway. So yeah, I don't know how much that really changes.
Yeah, I would agree that the dynamic is exactly the same. Where it's like if all tech always had to win a missile or delay it like super hard, like it had to delay the game like 4 minutes for tech to matter if it didn't win both one of the first missiles. So really, I feel like the dynamic is exactly the same. It's like, okay, if tech wins a missile, then the game is going to get significantly harder. And the only thing that will really impact that is the cost of the units in the tech player's deck. So this is something that did change. If the tech player is like playing really expensive units and they're just spamming them and losing them over and over, they're going to have a hard time affording the tech. But generally, I find that good tech players are leveraging rifles and they're just spamming the crap out of them. and then they're just supporting with like a Talon or an Orca here or there as needed, and not spamming those units, but just leveraging that unit exactly where they need it and making sure that they don't lose it and they don't lose any value, so they can save up for their tech and then snowball out onto the third missile.
Yeah, I saw Blade playing versus Runco earlier, and he won first missile because he had buggy, and then he kind of, I think he pop capped him and just waited the missile out, and then yeah, at the end of the game there were 4 rockworms on the field. It didn't feel like that really changed.
Yeah. I think I actually would have preferred like a reduction in cost of a lot of tech units, and then just like gutting their stats, like just cutting their HP in half in a lot of cases, so it feels like you can trade into them, maybe lowering their damage a bit, so they still 2-shot like tanks or whatever, but they don't quite like 1-shot like a pit bull. So it's like, okay, so you have to kind of be careful with how you engage with them, and be more methodical and strategic, and you can also afford them more quickly, so it's like there's more back and forth dynamic, and you can support the tech unit with other units. And I don't know how it would be kind of hectic to balance, but I think it'd be a little bit more interesting, and it wouldn't feel as binary as it does now, where it's like tech's out, oh god, what do I do, other than flip the missile and just try and win the game on a fluke.
Yeah, my problem with tech at the moment is mostly that you have specialists that are also good against a lot of other things. Like, for example, I can put a rockworm on a pad and I don't need to worry about infantry walking onto the pad.
Right.
Or if I build a disruptor, I don't need to care about bikes, which I really should be able to care about. So I think the first thing they should probably do is make tech mutants more specialist.
Yeah.
Like Titan should really not have any infantry damage. Disruptor should like 3-shot bikes or something like that, if any.
You don't find the Titan's health to be the problem though, because I mean, even if you, let's say you have like Grenadiers against the Titan, it still feels like it takes an eternity to clear the damn thing, and then
yeah, it might actually be the health. It's probably a combination of those two things. Because if it had no infantry damage, you could put like a rifle squad on the pad and it wouldn't care. But if you put a rifle squad against it now, I think it still 1-shots rifles.
It 1-shots the models, and then if there's a weird quirk where the splash in the second tile is actually much larger than the first tile, so if the unit is behind, if the Titan beam hits the second tile and there's a rifle squad on it, it will just fry the entire squad.
Yeah, it's just certain mechanics that I think really shouldn't be like a flame tank. You shouldn't build a flame tank into an APC. That shouldn't be a matchup you want to take.
Yeah. I think what tech units would you say are like the strongest right now, if you had to?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Titan is still pretty good because it obviously didn't get changed. I'm gonna put my bet on artillery, because I think Shade is still good, but I think people are going to be playing Shade less. They're going to swap into Banshees, and then Laser plus Artillery is just going to completely demolish decks like that. What else do we have? I guess Rockworm's still good, because AoE Splash against infantry is just too good, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm strongly, actually, you say people aren't going to run Shade. I'm strongly considering dropping Kane and picking up Shade. Because
I think it's gonna be a weird dynamic where people are gonna drop Shade because they think it's bad, and then people are gonna start playing Giga, Artillery, Predator Tank, and then people are like, maybe I need Shade against these units, and then I'm gonna pick it back up. And, okay.
Yeah, I'm just I'm anticipating a Giga meta. Like as soon as the map pool favors it. There's so many units that are not good right now that are really good on certain maps. Like I forget the name of this map. I can't think of it right now, but it's the one with the two pads that have 4 tiles each.
Tide pools.
It's like tide pools, but it's ice.
Oh, 2 fuses.
Yeah, 2 fuses. That's the one. It was on the tip of my tongue. That one is really good for like MG squad, and I saw like Sin Killer earlier playing against MG squad. The Guan Yin guy was playing it. And like Sinkiller was just demolishing this guy over and over, and then he gets him on that map, and he just sets up 2 MG squads, and like Sinkiller, he could never get near the MG squads because they had perfect coverage of the pads, and it's like I could see MG like let's say we get open water, hot zone, down the middle, and a couple other maps where like Rorschach maybe, where it's really easy to get to the pads and hold 2 to 3 pads with your MGs or your Giga or whatever. That's going to be a real pain to deal with. Like I could see Solomon coming back. I could see Shade coming back. Solomon's definitely not out. Like even though you're down 150 Tiberium over a 4-minute game, like that's just one less ion cannon. Just be careful with your units. Everyone's down 150, right? So
Yeah.
I could definitely see those units or those strategies like coming back. In contrast to what I had predicted at the onset of the patch.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why I'm trying Orca Bomber at the moment. It's because I feel like people are going to switch into either like Giga or Chuggy Mutant or like these like ground decks that really focus on staying in like one cluster. So I do think things like Inferno and Orca Bomber are going to be a possible solution to those things. So yeah, I'm very curious where that's going to go. It will very much depend on the map. I think the map will currently sucks for almost every deck. So
oh my goodness, I think if they do another patch, the only thing I want to see is the only thing I care about seeing is changing the map pool, removing. I don't know if Neutral Zone is in the map pool, but I know Side by Side is in the map pool and Middle Oasis. These maps, I think they should just go and they should replace them with something else. I mean, even Castaway, which is like a notoriously bad Fortress map, I would prefer to play on Castaway than Side by Side. Side by Side is such an abysmal map, just because the pads are spread out. You have to dogpile one pad, and then it never feels good. It doesn't feel good for either side, and whoever has the air units is probably going to win. So,
I remember when our most complained map was fucking Canal Row.
I never complained about that map. I would prefer that map, and I know it's an air map too, but I would prefer that map because at least there's 3 pads and there's some weird strategies you can employ to have a better time on it, and it's a more interesting map. I find Side by Side to not be an interesting map at all.
Yeah, I think what happened was we didn't have rotations of maps back then, so we always had to play Canal Row, and we got sick of it, and then they removed it. And then they also removed it from the pool of maps they added.
Yeah.
But obviously, there were some maps in there that really shouldn't have been, in hindsight.
If they could do the same business to Diamond League too, like switch out, I think what they should do is they should take out Side by Side and Neutral Zone from Diamond League and then sub in 3 lanes. It's the map from Champions, where there's like 3 pads and it's a desert map. I think that would be a great map. And then the Cauldron is the other one. That one's a really good cane map. It's a 3-pad map. It has 2 lakes on the side. Looks kind of like the Bullseye, but the missile silo is in the middle.
No. Yeah, I think they could definitely increase the quality of the game by removing certain maps.
Yeah. That's really all I want to see right now in the next. I mean, who knows in like 5 months, 8 months. So I'll be like, just give me anything. But right now, that's all. I'm like, oh my god, these maps are so bad. I wish they would change them. So
all right.
I think
but yeah,
we've covered the tech lab and the tech discussion in enough deep detail. Now let's go ahead and skip that. And just what do you think about the MCV base health increase?
Yeah, I'm a fan. I do not like Rivals tower defense personally. Losing first missile and then having to spend 2 minutes blocking units from getting to your base and also charging the missile and then also making sure you win 2 missiles. Because sometimes they'll try and kill your base and then they'll switch everything back, and you'll be at your base and they'll be closer to the pads than you are. So yeah, that's just not. It's not really an interesting dynamic nor a fun one, I think.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people discount is you create a lot of pressure by rushing the base that forces you to pull all your units off the map. And so since all your units are at your base defending, like there's no reasonable way you can contest a missile, and it's charging as people come to attack your base. So you're surrounding your base, and if they do enough damage, like you have an impossible decision. Like you're either going to lose your base or you're going to lose the missile. So
yeah, basically what I end up doing is I leave one of my like pop capped units on a pad, and if my opponent moves units to stall it, then I'll move it on and off the pad, and then yeah, when the missile's close to firing, I will switch up, like pull a Harv or pull some of my defending units. But it's not great.
and that's the other issue too, is some of the more some of the players at the top, or the more competitive players, have decided that the best way to do the base rush is to pop cap your units and then send everything at the base because you have nothing to defend with. And
Yep.
I mean, I'll take advantage of this too. If I see someone make, like this happened the other day, someone made two militant squads and 2 phantoms against me, and I had 2 mutants and 2 bikes. I win the missile, and that's what they had. I just immediately rushed their base. Like I'm not going to bother trying to clear any of their units. I'm just going to rush the base because they can't answer it. They have a harvester and then those 4 useless units, and then I pop out a phantom to slow down his phantoms from doing any damage to my base, and then I finish off his base. And I think that is a perfectly reasonable decision to make, because you're not deliberately like going out of your way to stop your opponent from being able to play the game. Like if they wanted, they could block their base still with the rifles and shoot down the mutants, but he didn't react in time, so I was able to take the base.
Yeah, I think that's not really. I mean, I guess some people would consider that pop capping, but the problem is, like, if I've had games where my opponent would open 4 rifles, and it's like, sure, you could do that, but if I just build bikes and block you off the pads, or just build a second Harv to start getting my tech out, like, you're the one that built the 4 rifles, not me.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes I feel bad, but other times I think
I try to not do it on the first missile, honestly, because if the 4 rifle thing or the 4 dog thing really feels bad, man. But
yeah,
I've been guilty of like someone builds 4 dogs and I have like a bunch of mutants. So I'm like, I'm just sending these at the Harv, man. Like I don't care about your dogs.
It's partly it feels bad, but also I think your opponent needs to not build 4 dogs in a row. Like it's
yeah.
If I when I played Bikers APC, I would go like dog rifle, and then I'd go either pitbull or Talon. Like I would never build a 4th dog or rifle. I would always build something that is also good against different types, because I know, like, if I do
you
that,
definitely want to diversify.
yeah, if I've had like one game where I did that. Like I went second rifle and I had 2 dogs, and my opponent went Catship, and they would just blow up my squads, and I couldn't build a pitbull because I obviously didn't have any pop cap. So yeah,
I one of the things, I mean, it's really hard to say like what is morally right in the game, right? Because it is kind of a dick move to just like ignore the dogs and go out to the Harv or the base or whatever. But when when I see someone just spam dogs, a lot of the times they will actually just win the missile, because it's so hard to clear the things in time. And they'll win the first missile, and then you'll be behind because they've only spent like 50 Tiberium on dogs, and they're still, and they've won the missile, so they have an initiative lead on you. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do at this point? Like, I guess I have to rush his harvester, because that's the only way I can secure an economic advantage and come back into this game, so that I'm competitive later on. Because I mean, what are these dogs actually doing for him other than winning the missile at this point?
yeah. When someone spams dog, generally I just stall the missile. Like I will clear them, but I will also just kind of block them from my back pad. I will just gain a unit advantage by him losing his dogs and not building anything but dogs.
Yeah, they do fall off after about 40 seconds.
Yeah, there will be a tipping point where I have like 2 lasers, a bike, and like a militant squad, and he had like 1 pitbull, and it's just like, okay, like, yeah. So I think versus dogs, the strongest advice I can give is just stall the missile.
So what do you think of this Strongarm change? Too much? Too little? Was it a
Well,
surprise?
it was like a little bit surprising, yeah. It does very much feel like when we're getting into the units now, they very much nerfed the units that had the highest pick rate, I think, and the
Yeah.
like probably the highest win rate as well.
I really
Um,
wonder that. Like it definitely seems like they just picked all the units that were like being used at the top of the ladder and nerfed them.
but it's hard to say. But there's a few things going on here. First of all, we have the economy change, which will hurt Strongarm because you really want to use it early. Like it's probably the best at first missile, I think, unless you have a really good Strongarm map. But the other thing is, I think we're gonna head into a meta where people are gonna open War Factory more and open tanks more often, or just in general units that Strongarm just isn't good against. So people are more inclined to start playing Jackson for their own units rather than playing a turret that doesn't help them in
And
the
it's
game.
20 more expensive now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something they probably didn't consider is that this economy nerf in conjunction with the switch to War Factory, the heavier units that just plink down the strong arm turret in like 1 second, especially MLRS. MLRS can just nuke that thing instantly. It definitely seems to have just nuked it into almost irrelevancy. I still think it's a strong pick for the first missile, but it definitely seems to fall off a lot more, especially as the game goes later.
I think we're gonna see Strongarm's tier rating depend very much on the map pool now. Like even
Yeah,
more than it did before.
yeah, I can agree with that.
Like if you have two maps that have like hot zone and Great Spire or something like that, yeah, that those are great strong armor maps. But if you get side by side and fucking middle oasis, that kind of trash, then you really wouldn't want to run strong armor, I think.
What do you think of APC cost increase?
Uh, I think the cost increase was really unnecessary. These changes all feel like they were made in a vacuum, and some of them worked out, but some of them didn't.
Yeah,
Um, APC got hit really hard by the economy changes. Because APC is a what I call a tip sink. It's like a unit you build when you have a lot of income. It's not a unit you build because you need it. It's a unit because unit you build because you have a lot of money to spend. But now there is less money to spend, and also it's more expensive.
yeah.
And also the meta will change into something that is not great for APC as well.
This unit is actually like one. I feel like one of the units that got impacted the most by the economy nerfs, simply because you have 150 less Tiberium, and that would have been 2 APCs right there, and that's usually what you would spend that 150 Tiberium on.
Yeah, APC is very much like it's a very efficient unit, but it's also a very inefficient unit because it's if your opponent has the right units to counter it, it's really you're just throwing money away. But because it holds a pad so long, that used to be like that's fine. Like it'll instantly pop into missiles, and the missiles will tank some damage, and then I'll win the missile. It's fine. But you probably don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. What about the vehicle
uh,
damage nerf? What do you think on that?
yeah, I think I would have just done the vehicle damage nerf because it beats it beat a pitbull 1v1, which I think it shouldn't. Especially because it also gets missiles after it dies. So I think the vehicle damage nerf was fine, but I think they should have just left the cost at 80. I think that would
Yeah,
have been. I think it would have been like a B to A tier unit if they did that. I think now it'd probably drop B or lower.
yeah, I can agree with that. Talon speed reduced to faster. What do you think about that?
Uh, so I think a lot of people have been complaining about this nerf. Like they say Talon is fine. They say jump jets are the problem. Is a common threat I've heard about Talon nerf. But having played against a lot of tech decks that run rifle, missile, Talon, Orca, I can say that Talon is definitely a problem. I've had games where my opponent would just throw a Talon at my middle pad, where there's like a full set of bikes, and before the bikes can fire a second volley and the missile charges again, there's another Talon. And this continued until he could afford an Orca after the Talon immediately. and then I lost the first missile just by my opponent throwing 5 Talons at the middle pad. Which in normal games that's fine, but because it was a tech game, I couldn't win because like my opponent would start building Titans and Zone Troopers.
Yeah, it feels like you can't. Feels like you can't end the game or resolve it in any way. It's just a stalemate forever.
Yeah,
especially on the old Econ.
So for that reason, I think that the speed nerf was necessary. I mean, Talon is still really good. It beats like 80 to 90% of the barracks and like 80% of the air tower. Talon spam will probably still do pretty well against Phantom, even though it's slower.
What do you think would have been a better direction? Increasing the cost by 10 or decreasing the speed to faster like they did?
Honestly, I think this is. I don't want to be mean, but I think this is a change I would have done. Because if like, it's really hard to change Talon if you just look at all the breakpoints. Its health is 909. So there are some very clear breakpoints between missiles, bikes, pit bulls that you really don't want to mess with.
Right.
So yeah, I think maybe I would have liked to see its attack speed versus air reduced, so it doesn't fire versus air as fast. Because it really hurts, like it hits like a truck against air units. The only air unit.
I almost like that aspect of it, honestly, but at the same time, I can see why it's a problem.
For 30 cost, that is a pretty decent problem, I think.
Yeah, I only asked the 40 cost down because I think it would become less efficient at that point, and maybe there would be a break point. Like, let's say you raise the cost of Talon and Jump Jet Troopers by 10 each. So Jump Jets are 50, Talons 40, and then just throw in Drone Swarm 2 for the heck of it, make that 30. I feel like people would start running out of money if they were spamming these units. So you would be able to, the game would still feel fast for some people because they don't like how slow it feels. But you wouldn't be able to indefinitely just pump out these units. You would run out of money.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like there's these like weird econ breakpoints where like 50 cost Banshee was way too good, but 60 cost Banshee was terrible. So yeah, I don't know. I think if Talon was 40, it probably wouldn't be that good, even if it was fastest.
It kind of sucks that GDI now only has like one fastest unit and not has like 4 or 5. I think they have Phantom, Stealth Tank. They used to have Banshee. They don't have Banshee. Bikes, Buggy. I think that's it.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So
I'm trying to think.
They had Banshee, and it's not that. They also had Catship, not fast anymore, and they had Shade. So they went from like 8 to like 4.
I guess in a reloading Inferno probably fits that list.
Yeah, reloading Inferno is actually faster. And then if you boost it, it's like beyond faster. It's beyond fastest. So.
But no, in general, I like this change. I think I've played some Talon post patch. I think it's still good. You can shut down, like if my opponent is playing Nod and they don't have bikes, Talon is a fucking nightmare. Like they'll try and boost lasers into it. That kind of works. But if I then spam more Talons, that doesn't that shifts. And if they build a Phantom, then yeah, I can even just build more Talons. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think it needed a change, and honestly, I think they could have gone either way, and probably would have worked.
Yeah, I think maybe the Econ change was enough to make Talon spam into middle pad not a problem. But yeah, I haven't played the patch enough to know.
I think that. I still see people spamming Talon and winning with it. It still seems pretty viable.
So yeah, I think Talon is now just a solid A tier unit.
Yeah.
I think it will, unless the meta really changes, I think it will remain that way. I think only if we see no air at all, then maybe people will just switch to drone swarm.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. What do you think about the Jump Jet Trooper? Have you had much time to play around with Jump Jet Troopers since they were lowered to faster?
I played them in my Borka deck for some time. I've been switching around between missiles and jump jets. It's kind of hard to say. They are they are a lot slower. Like with the Talon, I can kind of feel it, but with the jump jets, it's the problem with jump jets is that they need to reserve a tile to fight things. Like if there's an MLRS and there's like units next to it, you need to like reserve a tile to start shooting the MLRS. That's a lot harder now. You get bumped out of that tile really quickly, which means you have to fly another like tile further, which means you take more damage, which means you can't fire on the MLRS. So I think the speed didn't just impact your positioning; it also impacted the
combat ability.
The combat ability of actually finding.
Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed.
Like I had a game where my opponent built one rifle and two pit bulls, and I was trying to get the jump jets onto like one of the pad tiles to fight the two the two pit bulls, and I just couldn't. Like the pit bulls would keep bouncing me off, and the rifles would keep damaging them as they flew by.
Have you tried it with Jackson yet?
I think I've tried a few times, but early game economy doesn't really like me boosting suicide units. So
yeah. They're still really good at flipping.
Yeah, I've still used them for flipping. Like I've played against a double MG double sling deck, and I would just
sounds disastrous.
Yeah, I barked the first set of MGs, and then they all built 3 slings, and I was like, huh. I guess I need to flip this missile now. Like there wasn't anything else like
that. Sounds horrendous. That sounds like a game I don't want to play. Like that, there's no amount of medals that's worth it.
So I think for flipping, jump jets are still like S tier because they're an infantry flying unit, which is like really hard to.
They're unblockable. Count. They're purely unblockable.
Yep. Like if air spam is something you can build burst units against to stop them from flipping. But with jump jets, that's really not the case.
Yeah,
like, even if there's
no
flame
unit.
If there's a flame trooper on the pad, if you just fly it over, you can still flip it. Like 2200 health per model is just too much, I think.
Yeah.
So I think they're probably gonna sit between B and A. I think the decks are gonna be much more specific that run them.
I think they're not out, honestly. With Jackson, they seem pretty good. They're still they actually can neutralize units very quickly if you boost them, and they trade pretty much evenly with the Chuggy if you boost the Chuggy as it drives in. Now the Chuggy player has to like miss micro and leave the Chuggy in for a second, but it's better than Grenadiers in my opinion. That matchup.
Oh yeah. Don't play Grenadiers, guys. Yeah, I think they're still pretty good. Just not an automatic. I think missiles will come back as an infantry standard with this change.
How do you feel about snipers in the current meta since we're on GDI?
That is a good question. I think snipers will come back. Catship is gone. I think Razorback is not going to see as much play because clearing mutants with Razorback is not a fun time, and clearing chems is going to be even worse.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to contest with Drone Swarm, which you can pop cap with Pitbull very easily. And on Not side, you're going to contest with Inferno or Chem Buggy, probably. And Chem Buggy is probably something you can block if you have good enough micro.
Yeah, I'd say Razorback is like the hardest counter to Sniper. The big issue is it kind of feels bad sometimes. Like, let's say you're not facing the Sniper, you're facing Nod, and they just have a Phantom, and you need to use the Razorback to clear a Mutant or something that's isolated on a different pad. And they just bring the Phantom out, and then they snipe your Razorback, and then you can't contest that pad when you need to. So
yeah, and it's also like Razorback missile wall used to be the thing, but if your opponent has Chem Warriors, you can't even do that. Like you have to send the Razorback in blind, basically.
We'll see if chems become the new meta. I see a few people adopting it.
Yeah, I think the problem with chems is that building a chem deck is really hard.
Yeah, it's a little bit too expensive, I feel.
Because if you open militants and chems, if you lose the rifle war and go chems, your opponent goes venom, you lose. If you build a chem buggy deck, which is possible, if your opponent has shade, you lose. If you go wheels, wheel chem, if your opponent opened lasers, you lose. So there's a lot of matchups that just aren't very good if you have to put chems in your deck.
Yeah.
But once you get them rolling, they're really good. So
it's also odd to note. I was looking at the damage. I guess Chuggy actually does like 12 more. No, actually, it's like 12 or 22 more damage. I think it's 22 more DPS than Kim Warriors, and it's not a squad unit, and it has Raider. I never knew that. It's a little bit crazy to me.
yeah, chems tend to take like some time to kill like same things like mutants.
Yeah, I guess Kim Warriors at full squad they do 60 over every 0.5 seconds, so they do 120 DPS. And Chuggy does like 72 every 0.5, so it's actually doing 144 DPS. So it's like 22 greater, or 24 greater rather. DPS.
Also, I think Kembuggy places the cloud faster. I think
it will, because they both place the cloud at the same time, but because Kimbuggy has Raider, so it engages sooner, and because Chuggy doesn't have squad members, so it can't lose them, it's going to fire more often, and it's going to get the cloud down more reliably.
Yeah.
Just an odd little quirk. I was like, that doesn't seem very consistent with the design intent of squad members and similar cost units and Raider. You know, like everything the devs talked about in the past. It seems to be something that was overlooked. Anyway, that's enough of that tangent. Banshee, crazy change here, Banshee. What are your thoughts on it? It's a dramatic shift for the unit. It's basically been repurposed as a Talon here. How do you see it fitting into other players' decks or into your own?
So for Banshee, there's a few things. I think first of all, it doesn't feel too strong, but it also doesn't feel too. It feels pretty balanced actually from what I've played it. I think it's gonna really help Nod decks be able to play more different units. Because if you are weak to say Giga, you'd have to play like a Shade. But just putting Shade in your air towers generally doesn't work. Like you'd probably also have to have a Phantom or a Banshee, and that means you have less slots for War Factor or infantry. I think just having one unit that can answer various things in your air tower is pretty good.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that myself actually, like a flex Banshee along with the Shade. Because you typically don't want like two Shades floating around, but like you have one floating around and then you have the Banshee to kind of polish up any units and deal with air units. I think that seems pretty decent.
Yeah, I think in that case you're probably going to struggle against Pitbull spam though.
Yeah. Well, that's not the objective of that.
No, it makes sense. So yeah, I think in general they don't feel too strong or too weak. The matchup versus Talon I think is still unfavorable.
I should say before we go into Talon, that's an experimental thought. Don't be running off thinking that's the next meta, guys. This is one of those experimental things I've been thinking about.
Yes. So the matchup versus Talon is still unfavorable because if you are in a rifle war and your opponent opens Talon to beat your rifles, the Talon will be on defense. So you cannot open your Banshee, your air tower and Banshee, because if you fly the Banshee into the Talon will win, and you will just repeat a cycle of never getting that defender's advantage because your opponent will also spam Talons. But you cannot open Banshee into a rifle war because Banshee doesn't have any infantry damage.
The infantry damage isn't terrible actually.
I mean, it's not terrible, but
you're transitioning first, and then that gives your opponent an initiative to go Pitbull.
Yeah, so you wouldn't open Banshee first, and that means that Talon, which can open first, is favored. Over the course of the game, I think the Banshee does get better because as more units get added to the pile, if your opponent puts dogs on a pad, you throw a Banshee there. They can't put a Talon there. They have to respond with Pitbull. So you can start sending a tank in that direction, anticipating the Pitbull. But yeah, just first missile, I think Banshee's not that great.
Yeah. There are a couple other odd quirks with it, I guess. Because of the initial attack delay of 0.5 seconds on the Banshee, if the two units arrive at the same time, the Talon and the Banshee, the Talon will win by like a split second. If the Talon arrives like a little bit late, like like a tenth of a second late, they'll trade evenly. So yeah, it's just a really weird offset. But otherwise, the interaction seems to be balanced. They trade as you would expect. Even if the Banshee is boosted, the Banshee will win. It's not taking too much damage from the Berserker buff or debuff, I guess. And then what else about it? I'd say the one thing that kind of sucks about the Banshee is that it only does 270 air damage. So like, if a Phantom engages it, it's not going to hit as hard as a Talon will. So you're going to actually require an extra shot to bring down that Phantom, which means you need another Banshee usually.
I think where Talon is pretty good against Phantom. Well, Talon got its speed reduced, so I think Talon is not as good against Phantom anymore. But with Banshee, because of both the attack delay and the reduced air damage, you really don't want to use Banshee against Phantom.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to engage it.
Yeah, you really want to switch into bikes or stealth tank or your own Phantom if that's the deck you're running.
I almost wish what they had done is they had made the attack speed like 2.0 or 1.8 or 1.9 or something like that, and then they just left the damage where it was, and then just let the attack speed guide.
Yeah, it's hard to say. But also, I think Phantom should beat Banshees. I think Phantom should also beat Talons better than it does now.
The risk if they do that slow thing is it could just be broken against vehicles, and then it's like, oh, we're stuck with this broken air unit for the next 8-9 months or whatever.
Yeah. The only other thing I noticed is I played against a Rep Solomon type deck, and like the Banshee was pretty good against drone and Talon spam. But the alternation between Drone Swarm and Pitbull is really hard, because if you have, like, I had mutants in this case, the mutants can reserve a tile to fight the Pitbulls, which meant they died to the Drone Swarm. And then when I start spamming Banshees, my opponent would stack 2 Pitbulls, which would instantly clear the Banshee. And then when I switch back to mutants, obviously the Drone Swarms is a much cheaper option. So I lost.
Yeah.
I think if you play Banshee, you still need to have a good anti-Pitbull unit. You need to have
probably like
a Tick Tank
or a
Giga
Tick Tank, or something.
Tick Tank, Giga, Scorpion. I don't think mutants will cut it.
No.
Well, it depends on the map.
They're too slow. A lot of people, I feel a lot of people are actually overrating mutants right now. Just because they're very good, but a lot more people are playing shocks now. A lot more people are playing snipers. I mean, more than 0 is a lot more. So.
That's fair. No, I think mutants are good. I think people are just underestimating how good Chembuggy is to mix that combo rather than mutants being a good unit.
Yeah.
If you play Laser Chuggy, it's almost just as good.
I've had some bad experiences against like Giga with mutants where like I try to move in on the Giga and even just slightly just jiggling my mutant, because I know the Chuggy's going to come in, I lose half the squad. Even though I'm basically telling the mutant to move, and then I'm juking the move because I know it needs to stay where it is, so it can attack the Chuggy as it comes in, and I still end up losing half the squad because the unit is not good at taking tiles. It's not good at moving. So
if you ever play against less QQ's laser Chuggy, you will never want to build mutants in that matchup, because the way it works, if you fire with the mutants will fire on the lasers, and in between the shots, you will place down a cloud and then retreat, which means you literally cannot fire on the Chuggy. And then obviously you click it, and your mutant starts moving because it can't shoot. And then he drives it back for like half a second, and then he moves it away again.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Pretty
savage.
There's literally no way for your mutant to shoot the Chuggy. And obviously, it doesn't do a lot of damage against the lasers that are blocking it.
It is crazy how the difference between an average Chuggy player and like a League of Legends Challenger League player is just tooling around with Chuggy because he's bored or whatever.
Yeah, I've been playing Chuggy since last month, and it's everything I thought it would be. Like I've completely destroyed mutant decks while I had 4 War Factory units. Like I was playing laser, wheel, bike, chem buggy, tick tank, banshee, and I played against just a standard like mutant chuggy deck. And he spammed mutants, and he just couldn't break my tick tank chuggy combo. Like he just couldn't actually kill my pad holders fast enough before the chuggy killed them.
How do you feel? How do you feel mutant Chuggy is doing against like Predator Shock? I'll just stay there.
I haven't played that matchup enough to really say. I think I've beaten Bia like once on the open water, but that's like a really good mutant chuggy map. So that I wouldn't really call that experience like groundbreaking. But I do think the Shocks are probably favored, especially with Jackson coming back with Predator Tank. Like it's really easy to tap the chuggy. So I think I would favor the GDI deck. I think you would have to have answers in Nod like Banshee or Shade or something like that to switch that matchup back into your favor.
Yeah, I think I agree.
I think it is map dependent. I think open water, I think Mutant Chuggy is probably favored.
Yeah, any open map.
Any map where there's a space between the two pads, you aren't gonna have a fun time.
Yeah, definitely not. All right. Catalyst Gunship has seen some rough times here. I don't see as many people running it. What do you think on that?
The nerfs were weird as hell. I don't know what to say about that specifically. I was expecting them to nerf the vehicle damage on the cloud, so bikes would survive 2 shots. I expected them to nerf structure damage, and I expected them to nerf health. I think we got none of those things.
It looks like what they tried to do is they tried to nerf. It looks like they tried to nerf the structure damage, and then that nerfed the infantry damage, and then there was a post like, here's all the things you should do to Catship, or it was just like a general post. It looked like in the balance channel. It looked like they just went into that post and they just grabbed everything from it. There's like 5 suggestions. It looks like they took all of them.
Like they had a perfect opportunity to make Catship a good heavy anti-infantry unit, where they could reduce the attack speed like by a reasonable margin, but still have like 500 infantry damage.
I think its initial release was the best. Like it was actually perfect in its initial release. Everyone hated it because they didn't sit with the unit. They didn't think, oh, this is a specialized unit that is specifically for countering mutants, for shocks, for flames. It wasn't the right meta for it when it came out because nobody was playing half of those units. So, except for the mutants. So nobody wanted to give it the patience, like, oh, I'm not going to level this unit up. It's not immediately broken. And then they're like, just buff it its attack speed, buff everything. And then it became this insane unit that was crazy against everything. And now we're kind of just stuck with a potato gunship.
Yeah, the nerfs were weird. I mean, I'm happy it's no longer a unit in this meta. Like, I'm happy to not see it anymore. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen something different.
I believe that if it had the high weapon damage still for infantry, the meta might not have even changed. Just because shocks and mutants and stuff are they're the backbone of this meta right now. And you have a unit that neutralizes those units. I feel like there's no way we would see a meta shift away from Catship if it was still able to kill them.
I think the only thing I've written down here is that I think Catship, when you get multiple of them, if you spam them, they're still pretty good. Like if you send a Pitbull into 2 Catships, if you're not careful, it will die. But the economy changes don't really allow you to spam 60 cost units to throw them away anymore. So yeah, I think it's still a unit that people will play, but I fear to see where people would put it in their decks.
They are still good at exploding units. Like this gas time thing, really all it did is it made it a lot harder to dodge the fourth shot explosion.
Yeah. And it still has a lot of health as well.
Yeah. It's basically a tank in the sky, and yeah, I don't know how they should address this. I personally I don't want it to like 2-shot mutants. I want it to 3-shot mutants, but um,
Yeah.
it feels really bad when you just like slightly walk past the catship with a mutant and you lose half the squad because it locks on and the mutants are
I think
slow.
I think I think the 200 was all right. What number can we put in where it 2 shots lasers? Just barely. I think that's what they went for. Because I don't even know if training. I think you need more than training to beat 1-shot lasers now.
They should do that for Shatter. uh,
Yeah, just I think they picked a value that just not 1-shots lasers because that matchup is the most important one.
if it wasn't, if it was one level, if it was a 1-level advantage, Catship, it still wouldn't 1-shot. I think it would be equal.
Yeah.
So I could see that.
I think what they should have done is just nerf the attack speed by a ton instead of reducing the attack damage by a ton.
Yeah,
I think that would have made
it would
way
still
more
have
sense.
the lock-on problem, but it would basically it would still shred shocks and flames. I think, but yeah, I don't know.
So overall, I'm happy the meta will shift because it's gone, but the changes could have been made in such a way that it actually had a place somewhere.
Yeah, I love this comment down here. We're gonna read it. Why not tweak it with a screwdriver instead of a sledgehammer? That's my favorite comment.
He's not wrong. But yeah, I haven't really seen much Catship since to evaluate its current strength. I've had like one unranked game where my opponent sent one Catship into 2 lasers and it died instantly. I've had one game where someone sent a -1 Catship into my boosted missiles, and I lost. It shot 3 times. Like I lost 1 missile model, and 1 got half damaged. I was just looking at it like, damn, that you just spent like 60 Tiberium into like a 50 Tiberium generalist, and you lost.
On the other hand, I mean, I saw DTaz just mucking about with the thing, and he was playing a Chuggy Catship, and he's just driving 2 Chuggies underneath the Catship, and it killed like 3 pit bulls.
Oh yeah, that interaction still remains, I suppose.
And it's a little bit easier to do now because, I mean, let's say you want to deal with Kim warriors or whatever. I think Catship or the Chuggy's probably better, but it's not good against tanks. But let's say you want to do it with Kim warriors. The Catships don't exist to kill the Kim warriors anymore. So now the combo is a real thing, I think.
I think the combo will be the most likely thing we'll see. But it's very hard to build a deck with 2 tier 2 anti-infantry units.
Yeah, I'm just saying if it actually killed lasers, I feel like you would actually see the combo played.
Yeah, I think Chuggy Catship is something I could see. If you have a strong anti-tank counter, maybe Shade. But it would be a very finicky. Like you'd have to get way ahead on the game to pull that off successfully, I think.
Yeah. What do you think about Shade here? They got some it looks like pretty minor nerfs on the face of it, but it doesn't feel that way.
I have not played Shade. I have played against a few Shade. Well, actually, no, I've played a few Shade games. I probably would have liked to see more nerfs personally, because Shade is a very oppressive unit when it comes to the meta. It crushes heavy vehicles very easily. It's very cost efficient because of EMP and stealth. It's very hard to actually kill. But I've seen a lot of people reporting that the reduced speed makes it a lot easier to defend with like lasers or like, for example, like running away from it as it's firing.
Yeah, you can't just chase things down and expect to not lose it.
Yeah. So yeah, I would have probably preferred more nerfs on it, but I think it's probably in a reasonable spot now.
Yeah.
I think it's still going to be A tier, and I think once people settle this meta down, I think we'll see more Shades again to counter things like Predator Tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it will come
that.
back. If there's a map pool that's good for Giga, I think everyone will start picking up Shade again. Like they won't play laser drones. They won't play Banshee. They might play Inferno instead, but they will definitely play Shade.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. As I already said, I'm looking at playing it again. I'll play with Oksana most likely to neutralize units. That's a stark contrast to my Kane days. So look out for that, guys.
I started this meta by playing Chem Warrior with Buggy. So I would go Militant, Hearth, Militant, Buggy to try and force my opponent to switch into something that I could counter with like Chems, for example, or like a Scorpion tank. And my opponent would just go Shade. And I'd have the new Banshee ready, but flying a Banshee against a stealthed aircraft just doesn't work. So it kind of neutralized the matchup, and then I would still be behind because the buggy every time I pushed the buggy forward, it would get sniped by the EMP. So yeah, that's why I don't like Shade, because a lot of openers and like matchups just change completely when your opponent has a Shade in their deck.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope at least this change will make it less people will play Shade, so more Predator tanks and more factory will show up.
Yep.
That there will be some equilibrium where it's balanced in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Fanatics, yay, nay? What do you think? Do you think people should not run them?
So I'm pretty sure. No, actually, I'm not 100% sure. But this weapon damage reduction does not matter versus militant rifles.
That's correct.
So this change really only matters against shock troopers and flame troopers, and maybe other fanatics. I'm not sure. I think it's mostly ends against shock troopers in this case.
Yep.
I'm a fan. I think fanatics should lose to shock troopers because they have their AoE boost, which is just insanely strong. They can boost each other. Like if you have two fanatics, they will boost each other. And fanatic decks have wheels, which are also very good against shock troopers as well. So I think people just need to learn to mix in more wheel squads with their fanatics when they are facing heavier infantry decks.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the reload speed on fanatics, their reload is like 0.9 seconds or something like that, 0.8, something like that. So realistically, that means they're firing every 0.3 seconds, 0.3 of a second. So really all this did was like add 0.3 of a second of unboosted kill time to a flame or a Kim. And I mean, if you're fighting those units, you really want to have two fanatics grouped up. So realistically here, it's actually not that big of a nerf in my mind. It's like maybe you're losing like 0.2 seconds on the kill time.
Yeah, and also excluding PopCap for this reference, but fanatics are 10 cost less. So if you have wheel plus fanatic, that's the same price as a shock trooper.
Right.
And the wheels will get boosted as the fanatics die, which will just add more DPS to them as well.
And we're still seeing players make good use of them. I think MMR. I think thanks for the MMR is playing Fanatic Scorpion, and he seems to be getting pretty good mileage out of it.
Yeah, I played against him once with Chuggy deck with Tick Tank, I think. I mean, obviously he didn't build a lot of Fanatics because I had Chuggy, but like from what I've seen, they're still just fine. I think AoE boost is something people underestimate how good it is.
Definitely.
I think we'll see a return of like Fanatic Inferno type decks, where they'll start sacking their Fanatics down into like counters, and then then the Inferno comes in with an Oksana boost on top of that, and then you won't be able to respond.
50% faster than the fastest units.
You won't be able to respond to the Inferno bombing your tile, and it will like reload in like 4 seconds or something like that. Like it'll be pretty insane. So yeah, I wouldn't count Fanatics out. I think they'll probably sit at D tier now, maybe depending on the meta, but not bad.
Yeah. Stealth tank. This is the change you've been waiting to talk about. I can feel it. What are your thoughts?
So yeah, there's a couple of things with Stealth Tank. I for one, I love this change. I've been waiting for this change for probably like 1.5 years, 2 years. So the problem with Stealth Tank is, I mean, where to even begin? It counters a lot of units. It counters it used to anyway. It countered almost the entire War Factory, excluding maybe Predator Tank, I guess. It almost one-shots the Scorpion, so that's if you just have like a random militant or laser lying around, that just basically doesn't, it still dies. It countered the entire air tower for both factions, except for laser drones, I guess, and Shade to some extent. It would trade okay against Inferno, depending on the matchup. But that's just a lot of units it would counter instantly for no punishment. Because the whole thing about Stealth Tank is because it has stealth and a fast firing time, even if you have like a half-dead Scorpion sitting on a pad, the Stealth Tank will drive up and it will kill it before the Scorpion can shoot it.
Yep. Usually the Stealth Tank will be double boosted.
Yep. So you have a unit that has a infinite value, basically.
Yep. I 100% agree.
If you compare that to Phantom, if you have a Phantom fighting, for example, Talons, the Talon will almost always get a shot off on the Phantom as it dies. So the Phantom will you'll be able to kill 7 Talons with 1 Phantom. Like maybe a little more on like a good day or a good scenario. But there's always trades going on. You're trading health on the Phantom for killing a unit. The same goes for almost every burst unit in the game. Like Inferno, if you bomb bikes with an Inferno, yeah, you lose like, 20-30% of your life to do that. And that's considered a good trade. Because you put fire on the pad, you clear the pad, you can take that pad. But with Stealth Tank, you aren't trading any health for doing damage to units.
Yeah, the best of the best players could keep it at full health and snowball 400 Tiberium advantage. I could actually see that being a tremendous problem in the new meta, the new Econ meta, if it was able to trade as effectively as it was in the past, just because they would never run out of money. They never did before. So it would continue to be like that.
So, yeah. Old Stealth Tank was a huge problem. I've played a few games against good old Maximus. He's a prime example of someone who really knows how to, I want to say, abuse Stealth Tank. Like, he knows how to get it in. Yes. So, I switched my Mutant deck for a Tick Tank deck because I was kind of getting tired of building mutants, getting a Venom or like a drone, Venom or a Catship against me, and in the moment I built any counter to that unit, a Stealth Tank would show up. Like if I built a Venom to clear Fanatics, a Stealth Tank would one-shot it, and then the Fanatics would obviously return to the pad. And by the time I built a new Venom to clear those Fanatics, the Stealth Tank would have reloaded. So I would have an infinite cycle of not being able to take a middle pad because the Stealth Tank would continuously clear my counters to their units. So yeah, I switched to Tick Tank. I was like, okay, Maximus, I'll put 2 Tick Tanks down on my back pads. Try me. So what he did was he sent his 2 Stealth Tanks to my Harvester. He one-shot it, and then he started spamming Shades because he had 200 Tiberium. So I still couldn't win because if I rebuilt my Harvester, the Stealth Tanks would return to the Harvester. If I moved my Tick Tank to counter the Stealth Tanks to defend my Harvester, they would one-shot it because a driving Tick Tank dies in one Stank volley. And if I send lasers, they would take like 20 seconds to get to that tip field, and then he would just build a Venom. Like he would just send a Venom over from somewhere. And I would have to put a unit next to a Tiberium field away from the pads just to mine Tiberium.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't even be fighting pads to win the game. Like, I would just be trying to get money.
Do you think that stealth tank needs a compensatory buff now that it's been nerfed to basically been neutered against pit bulls and bikes and
Yeah,
harvesters?
so I am not sure yet. So there's a few things with this nerf. Yeah, I've seen a couple of people saying like, "Oh, it doesn't one-shot Pitbull anymore, so it's bad." But you shouldn't look at Stealth Tank versus Pitbull in a vacuum. There will be other units on the field. There will chip damage. There will be other things going on. So I really don't think it not one-shotting certain vehicles is really a bad thing. Compare this to Phantom. If you build a Phantom into, let's say, an Orca, that's a reasonable trade, and your opponent never builds any air units again, that Phantom is useless. Because you have to put it on a pad at some point, because you spend the pop cap on it. Like, you cannot just leave it like at your base until your opponent builds an air unit. You have to sacrifice it at some point to put it on a pad, which your opponent knows. So they'll start building pit bulls and anti-air units, or like missiles, to put on their backpad because they know you'll send the Phantom on there at some point. You cannot do that with stealth tank. If you build a stealth tank to kill an Orca and your opponent starts building like a pit bull, you can still chip that pit bull to nearly kill it. You can still get value out of that stealth tank long past there not being any air units. So yeah, I don't think it not one-shotting vehicles is a huge deal. I've seen people pull it off just fine.
Yeah.
And lastly, I also think because of the economy changes and the way the meta is changing, having Phantom as a sole unit in your air tower is not going to be great. I think people are going to shift into more War Factory, and having a 100 cost stealth tank is going to be much preferred to having a 150 cost Phantom.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In almost all matchup, like maybe in Inferno matchup, you really want to spend that extra 50 to start your air tower, but I think in most cases you still want to have a stealth tank. So yeah, all that combined, I think it's still going to be fine. Is it going to be worth 100 tib? I don't know. A lot of people are still playing it right now, so if you just look at like the top 5 or top 6 not players, they're all still playing stealth tank. So
yeah, it's usually an indicator that the unit is still pretty healthy and stealthy.
I think I would leave its cost as it is right now. I think it's not going to be an S tier unit anymore, but it's still going to be a solid A tier unit at the moment.
So they should rename it AL tank, is what you're saying.
I guess so.
Right.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of this change. Stealth tank was the number 1 unit I wanted to see nerfed, so I'm happy this is here. Both the vehicle damage and the subsequent harvester damage. I think stealth units shouldn't be very good against harvesters, but because of their nature, of their stealth nature. They got this right with Shade. Like release Shade was good against everything except harvesters. Like it beat infantry, it beat vehicles, it beat structures, but it couldn't beat a harvester. So yeah, I think if that's any indication of how that matchup should go, I think this is a great change.
So I don't know how you feel about the disabling challenge battles in Tiberium League, but I've definitely noticed a difference since that's been introduced. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Tiberium League change is difficult for me to say because all my units are level 15. So I am personally not affected by this change at all. But I have clearly seen like some people that are very good that have been playing for only like a few months. Yeah, they can't do anything. They have like level 12, 13 units, and the moment they get anywhere close to top 100, they can't climb. They can't progress any further. They cannot get any pro race crates because of this. They probably won't even win any normal races because of this. Like if they get into a race against a whale, if they play the same amount of games, they'll still lose that race. So yeah, like this change is very much a we had a nice thing and like 1% of the player base ruined it for everyone else.
Yeah.
So thank you, 1% of the player base. Really appreciate that.
The interesting thing I've noticed actually at the top is it feels harder to climb. It doesn't feel harder to climb. It feels harder to get medals in the same number of matches, because before you had so many challenge battle abusers basically injecting like thousands and thousands and thousands of medals into the ladder because they would never lose and they would always gain. So now that doesn't exist anymore. And now when you get to like the top 20, you're starting to see like 10, 12 medal gains instead of the 20 to 32 that you'd get in the past. And
the medal difference has definitely shrunk, which I think is good for me because I don't play as much. But I can see for some people that would be.
Well, not only has the medal difference shrunk, but the amount of people with high medals is also shrunk. So like, there's not as many people above 40. There's not as many people above 4,200 medals right now at the third week of the season. I think it's third, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of an oddity. That's the first time we're seeing this.
Especially I think I don't know if it's still the case, but when I looked at GDI, there was like I think like a 700 medal difference between top 1 Nod and top 1 GDI or something like that.
Yeah.
It was pretty insane. And obviously I know that
I think it's 400 right now. It's like 45.50 versus 49.50 or something.
Terran spammed a lot of Nod games before the patch, so that's probably why that discrepancy still holds. But yeah, that's any indicator of how challenge battles have probably changed the face of the medal count. I think that's a pretty good way of seeing it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just the challenge battle abusers that contributed to this phenomenon, honestly, because now you have people who just aren't getting challenge battles at all in Tiberium League, and that there's a trickle down effect, right? Like it's no longer as it was more of a zero sum game before this change than it is now, because there's just someone has to lose the medals now in Tiberium League.
Yeah. I'm now that I think about it, those medals have to come from somewhere. So I think the only medal gain you're gonna have now is people queuing into master players.
Yeah, which seems to still be pretty common. I saw Great Boy get like 20 Diamond League players in a row yesterday. It was a little savage.
Basically, yeah, he if he gets 20 Diamond players, that's 160 medals surplus that he can then spend on losing to other players higher up.
When you get to that higher rating, you're gonna just face more Diamond and Master players.
So overall, I like this change for me, but I do not like this change for the general Rivals community.
Yeah, I mean, you could make that argument for a lot of things in the game, like the economy change. You could make that argument. Like, a lot of people just want a chill game where they don't have to think too hard about managing their units, and they just want a surplus economy so they can not feel limited by the system, right? So
I suppose that makes sense, but adjusting your playstyle is a lot easier than literally having to go through a progression system.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How would you rate this patch overall?
I mean, there really wasn't anything in here that was bad. Like, all of the changes, I think all of the changes I agree with, except for maybe Strongarm and APC Tiberium nerf. But even Strongarm, like, if it's a good mapple, I think we'll still see Strongarm probably. The only thing I am missing is a buff to Grenadiers, a buff to Shatterer probably as well, because GDI now doesn't have really a lot of good anti-infantry options anymore. So their deck diversity is going to go way down, which I think will result into there just being one GDI deck in 2 months.
Yeah,
I think Nod will have like
we could see that.
I think Nod will have like 3 or 4. Like, there will be Chuggy archetypes, there will be Inferno archetypes, and maybe Giga or Tech. So yeah, 3 or 4. And I think GDI will just be Pitbull, Predator Tank, Shock or Sniper, Drone Swarm, or like Razorback, and that's it. Like, the variance will be very low. So I really would have liked to see buffs to things like Shatterer to So people could play like Shadow or Predator tank. Like that would be an interesting combo of deck. Or maybe maybe not Mohawk, but like yeah, certainly some units. Maybe Borka going back to 100 cost. I could see that.
Yeah.
So this patch lacks buffs to make GDI's deck diversity better.
What do you think about Borka going to like fastest speed or something like that? Because seems like GDI is really lacking on fastest units.
I mean, it feels great when you Jackson boost it. I can tell you that much. But also, if it was fastest, you could clear pads like really close to the missile firing. Like your opponent would have vision of your base, and then suddenly there would be like a boosted Borka just storming through the pad. You'd have no time to like move units back. So I think that would be. I don't think I would.
It could be potentially busted. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would just reduce its cost back to 100. And then I think the meta will still favor it slightly because people are moving back to War Factory.
Do you think it needs like an infantry damage buff, maybe, so that it stays kind of bad against vehicles? But
I mean, I played a game where my opponent sent 2 Chem Warriors to my base, and I put a Borka on top of it, and I killed both of them. So
I think if you can get the full payload, it will kill. But if you're not able, if you only get like the tail end of it, like it will still, it actually won't even kill lasers if you're not like very precise, and you get like just the tail end.
Yeah, but I managed to clear both of them. So I'm
It seems like it does about 220 damage, 220 to 230 damage, something like that. And it's very precise. Like the distance is very precise. Like if you aren't directly over the laser, like one will live. One of the models will live.
Yeah, but I think from what I've played of it, I think the damage is actually still good enough. The problem I had was like I would play like Stonewall. No, not Stonewall. It's like a map where you have 3 pads and there's lots of rocks all over scattered, and the pads are super far away.
Fertile Basin?
Yeah, I think that one. And if I set the Borka to the top pad, I would possibly clear one pad, but then my opponent would just spam units to the other ones. And the distance between the pads was so large that I just couldn't, like, when I moved the Borka away to put a different unit on that pad, my opponent could respond instantly. So there, your screen is still large, by the way.
Yeah, I was just bringing up Fertile Basin.
Yeah.
Is that so? Map?
Yeah. So there was just no way Borka going in such a way that I could actually win the game. So I think there's definitely maps where it's just not good.
Yeah.
And I think the current map pool is not great for it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I'd have to play more to really find out. So I think in that case, I think
like
100
open
cost
water and Rorschach. Yeah, 100 costs would definitely help.
Yeah, especially now because there's less money overall. Yeah, it's more impactful when you clear a full pad, but also if your opponent just moves the Pitbull away and the Shock Trooper lives with like 2 models, that's a massive feel bad. Because if you send dogs to clear the remaining shocks, the Pit will kill them. And if you have like rifles, the shocks will probably still win. So there's you can't even take the pad you bombed, which is the worst.
Yeah. All right, so it's been about an hour and 30 minutes now. I don't know if you have any time obligations or if you want to talk about any decks you work on here or you're working with in the patch. Or
I do have an RTL match at some point. The guy is online, but I'll ask him how much time he has. But I think we should probably talk about what the meta is going to change into a little bit. I think that would be a good thing.
We can do that. Do you want me to just bring up the tier list and we can do like a...
Oh, yeah, I would love to see that.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Scene 2. Okay, let me just find these tier lists real quick. Okay, so these were my mock-up tier lists. I'm not saying they were going to be accurate. In fact, I didn't believe they were going to be accurate at all. But Content has been deleted. That's a rip.
There was a tier list, and then it was gone.
Yeah. I saw it for half a second. I get into the page, and then it deleted it. So that's pretty cool. Oh, well. Did I take a screenshot of it? I think I might have. Let's see.
I almost want to say if it's on the VOD, you can. Oh no, you.
It's in my YouTube video.
Yeah.
Pictures. Okay, it's not pictures. No, I took a screen cap of it. Okay, I think this is roughly where it is now. Where the heck is this it? Yes, I did. Okay. Oof. Dodging a bullet here. Now, I did update it before or after I took this picture, so it's a little bit different than what I had. But yeah, I'll bring it up. And let's shrink this down. Screen maybe.
All right, I can see it, but it's not. Yeah, you'd have to switch your screen size.
That should be good enough, right? Yeah, so actually I had Strongarm a little bit lower than this. Initially, when I saw the changes, I initially thought Strongarm would be higher, but evidently not the case. And everything else, I believe, is roughly where it was when I rated it. Now, I would rate things a little bit differently now. Do you have any thoughts on how it's set up?
All right, so obviously, first things first. Pitbull is now the best unit in the game. I don't think there's any dispute with this anymore. Catship is gone. Shade is kind of gone. Stealth is kind of gone. Jump jets are a lot worse. So Pitbull is basically in its own tier, I think, at this point. For the rest of it, maybe I'd place Talon further down if the meta shifts into more War Factory. I think Drone's Farm is going to be more useful at clearing mutants, rather than having like a multi generalist unit. For the rest of it, I think it's looking pretty good. I'm trying to decide if Predator can be better. I've seen a lot of people switch to Predator, but also I think if more people switch to Predator, more people will switch into Giga or Shade. So it's kind of probably balances itself out. I would take Strongarm down. I don't think I would put Jackson up yet. I think people are playing Jackson more because there's not really that many other options. I think Shocks can go up a little bit, probably.
I honestly would rate Shocks up here at this point.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think a lot of, especially GDI decks, will not have good answers to Shock Troopers anymore. Because if you play Drones Farm, you're going to lose to Pitbull. If you play Razorback, I think it'll go a little better, but you can't block for your Razorback anymore.
Yeah.
You can't put missiles in front of Shocks. That just doesn't work. And if they're playing Snipers, I think that is a slightly favorable matchup. But also, it really depends on your micro.
Where would you rate Snipers?
I think they're actually going to be really good.
I'm thinking all the way up here, honestly. In like the best players' hands, you can snowball so much money with these.
I watched a Alicia stream last night before I went to bed, and it's just she opens missiles, which is completely insane, and then just completely steamrolls with the sniper.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like her opponent would go like into Venom, and she would just concave the missiles in such a way that the Venom would just die.
Yeah, you can't die with the snipers.
Yeah, so they're definitely going to be A tier, I think. I'm not sure about S tier yet, but if you can manage the micro, then I think they'll sit somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And I don't think the meta can shift in such a way to counter snipe. I think the only GDI counter to snipers is basically Orca Bomber. And for Nod, it would probably be Inferno or Giga. Like you'd have to respond 2 range units with 2 range units. Because if you make like a laser chuggy wall, the snipers will just sit at 2 range and snipe the lasers. So that really won't help you win that matchup.
Yeah, definitely not. What do you think Predator or MLRS is better? Personally, I think MLRS is like is really broken in a great player's hands, but it's like I feel like it's the highest micro unit in the game, honestly, because you have to cancel shots with it, which is like, okay, I got to click away from where it is, and then I got to click back to where it was to make sure that it doesn't fire, and I got to do this like every second just to make sure that it's going to fire at the exact right target. Because people will queue up their moves and they'll like try and move a bike in behind like a shock, and if you do that, if you keep doing that micro over and over, they're gonna mess up, and the MLRs can be ready to snipe the bike or whatever's coming in behind.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that sentiment. I do think the map pool will severely depend whether you'd rather have a Predator tank or an MLRS. Like if we have side by side, for example, good luck getting value out of an MLRS like at all.
Oh yeah. It's kind of hard to use it on Fertile Basin too, the map we were talking about before.
So I think baiting out shots with the MLRs is a lot easier, and we'll have units like Banshee coming into the meta, which they don't clear MLRs instantly, but they'll chuck it down pretty heavily.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. So
I mean, I was in a game earlier where I was playing MLRS. Well, actually, the opponent was playing it, and I was playing Venom, and I chose to snipe. With my cane, I chose to snipe the MLRS, which was a misplay because all I had was air and infantry, and it's like, yeah, if people are just playing air, then the MLRS is not going to be that good. It's just going to be a basically a paperweight for the pads.
Yeah, I think Predator tank will still have more value because if they are forced to make bikes, at least the Predator tank will store. They'll send the bikes at a pad that is not contested by the MLRS, and you can't really move it. I think that mobility will kind of kill its potential above like maybe A tier at best.
Do you see any potential for, or do you agree with the rating I've given Orca here, or do you think it belongs a little lower? Or
Orca is a tough sell. It's honestly a really good unit. People often say, "Oh, I wish Shade was like Orca," but they don't realize that like playing against Talon Orca first missile with like bikes is just a nightmare. So I think if the meta shifts into a really heavy War Factory, Orca might be pretty good to have like as a splash unit. But also if they are playing things like Slingshot or Banshee, the new Banshee, or stuff like that, I think it will be B tier as best. I think the meta will heavily depend on where Orca lands in this case.
Okay, yeah, I'll just put a ... on it then. to be continued.
But yeah, the thing is, like, if your opponent plays like Giga, they'll have an answer to Orca. Like, they'll have a deck setup that will counter Orca. Like, they'll have laser walls, they'll have Banshee, air blocking it, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So even if the meta shifts into something that Orca would be good in, the meta will know about it.
Do you do you anticipate? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries, I'm done.
Do you anticipate any fortress type setups, like if, let's say the maps change, specifically MSV here or MG squad kind of taking over? Like, let's say we get a map pool where there's three good fortress maps, like down the middle, open water and Rorschach. Do you think these types of decks will be really good, especially considering that no Harv decks didn't really get nerfed, the natural counters to MGs didn't really get nerfed, and then for MSV you're one building, so you're actually saving money in the long run once you get set up?
I think MG is going to be a real problem because all the natural counters to the good natural counters to MG aren't really here anymore. If your opponent just builds like Pitbull MG, that's a big yikes.
It is possible that, like, let's say the good maps appear. Now, open water is kind of crap for Strongarm, but like the other ones I mentioned, down the middle, really good for Strongarm. What's the other one? Provided they don't have the MG in the spot that you would put the Strongarm turret. Rorschach.
Will.
Rorschach is another decent Strongarm map as well, if I'm not mistaken. Could be mistaken there. I'm not 100% sure.
I will say that MGs take a while to clear things like shocks. So unless you are really good at blocking with your no harm units, they're probably going to die. So yeah, I think MGs will have a place somewhere in the meta. I think they'll come back to some degree. But even if they come back, I think they're a pretty niche unit. So
yeah,
I think like 2% of the player base will be playing them at best.
I guess it's kind of nice that it's a weird spice that I absolutely detest playing against. That will be in the meta just to shake it up and keep it interesting.
Maybe I actually know how close I am to 15 MG, but I might
No,
I might just around.
No, you're out of the call if you're even considering that.
I'll add slingshot and
Oh my
Liang.
God. Yeah, you're out. You're out. All right. So, would you agree with this general layout? I guess.
Yeah, I think so. So maybe Mohawk can be B tier.
Oh yeah. I didn't think about that.
I mean, Stealth Tank still one shots it, but there will be less Phantoms. There will be more Banshees, which aren't as great.
I've been punked by it a few times. Like someone just been playing it and they got like a few Raiders in that I wasn't expecting. They got like 3 Raiders in the same match, and it got me. So
there's that. I think I'm trying to decide if Titan is good enough to be B tier. I think we'd have to kind of weigh out the Econ changes and how that fares.
Yeah, I think it could definitely be B tier. I would maybe even consider moving Disruptor up to trash tier, D tier, and then maybe even move Titan up to B tier here. I guess this is C tier. I don't know my alphabet.
It depends on how heavy the War Factory is.
Yeah, I just say the Disruptor is going up because there's a lot of heavy infantry, and then it's a good pair with the Zone Trooper.
But yeah, the problem is the heavy infantry will be solely on Nod. Like you won't see because Grens are garbage. So I'm actually wondering if Grens are just like below trash. But maybe they're not that far.
They could. I mean, I'm really not sure. I've seen Noidhex experimenting with them. They could be a pain to remove, maybe, but against a really competent player, I feel the Chuggy is going to come in, drop the cloud, get out like you're saying, and take 0 damage. So
the problem is they cost 70, so it's like.
And then snipers against it, bad. Shocks against it, bad. So.
Like if you play like Gren, Razorback, I just don't think you're gonna ever make any good trades.
Yeah.
Economy-wise.
Especially if you fall behind in the anti-air war, they bring out like a hammerhead or whatever. You're really, really far behind at that point.
So I think the meta will shift into, like I said, I think we'll see Pitbull and Predator will probably be in most decks. Their primary infantry on the barracks will either be shocks or snipers, combined with probably missiles or jump jets. I don't know if we're going to see much riflemen. Now that I think about it, I think riflemen will probably not fit in that deck anymore. And then I think we'll see either Razorback or Drone Swarm to round off that composition.
So you think riflemen are going down a tier to like down here? Or?
I'm not sure if they like. I had a problem playing the Borka deck. I was playing Dog Rifle, and my opponent was playing like Shock Pitbull. And I just like I couldn't build rifles.
Yeah, the increased prevalence of shocks, and the no more natural counter of like Catalyst Gunship is really
like normally you build rifles to counter missiles, But if your opponent plays no missiles, they put a Pitbull because Pitbull's broken.
That's kind of why I'm rating the shock actually up in the OP tier, because it's like even though the game, none of these units have really changed. The dog shock, the dog rifle shock combos, none of these units have changed. It's because you're just seeing more shocks. Like I'm getting punked out of missiles because I'm going dog first, then they're going like missile shock or whatever, and then I try to transition into rifles, and I get punked, like, because they have dogs, and it's like, well, I can't answer this.
Normally, the problem was with dog shock is that it was really inefficient to clear missiles. Like you'd spend like 80 Tiberiums getting all the shocks ready, and then your opponent would be they'd have the money ready to respond. But there's less money now, and also the counters to shocks aren't as good anymore. You can't just expect a Catship to completely demolish them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Venom does pretty good against them, but they won't clear them in time before the Pitbull comes in.
Let's take a look at Nod. That's a small Nod. Okay. So I think I didn't have any changes for this one when I drafted it after the fact, but I might have some now. I need to take a look. Let me find my edit button. Okay, here we go. I'll use red this time.
So yeah, right off the bat, I don't think there's any units that are S tier in Nod anymore. Like, well, maybe excluding the commander, but
I might move bikes to like right here.
I mean, you still have to play bikes against Talon and stuff like that, but even that's like
they're definitely worse than Pitbull, but I feel like their flexibility, their speed, just makes them really good overall. It actually seems like a bad play to not have them in some capacity in your deck.
I think if you're playing like Laser Banshee and then skip the bikes, you'll really struggle against Talon. So I think Talon is going to kind of be the deal breaker on how good bikes are, because you're probably not going to use them in tank fights as much, like unless you're like really good at microing your tanks. And you're probably also not going to use them really against orcas or things like that anymore. That's where you pull out the Banshee nowadays. But because Talon is so good against both your infantry and your entire air tower, that's going to be the prime bike.
I guess I could see why you say the Talon. Now that you mention, I can see why you say the Talon is doing too much air damage. At this point in the game, it might actually be doing too much.
Honestly, it might. Maybe it should actually just do less infantry damage, to the point where you
loses the lasers.
Loses the lasers to some capacity.
Yeah.
Because the problem is lasers are really slow. So if you and your opponent build a Talon and a laser at the same time, the Talon will still get defenders.
I actually don't like that, because I feel like a lot of the strongest strategies right now rely on setting up a laser wall and then flying an Inferno over it or a Chuggy.
That is also true. Yeah, it's difficult because I think being good against infantry and air first missile as a cheap unit is really that's like the dream. Because if your opener is infantry, you are probably going to go into air if you want to go first. Well, if you want to go first, yeah. Like responding to things is also almost always going to be bikes.
Yeah. You're just looking at this. I don't really see any. I mean, actually, this is the only change. Like, well, I wouldn't quite put it there yet. Where the heck is the erase tool? I would also put Inferno right here.
Yeah, I think Inferno is definitely going to be A tier at the very least.
Giga, I'm not sure about. It's map dependent. I could feel it. It could be very oppressive. I think it could easily be here, but until we see it, I don't really want to say that. And then, yeah, overall, I think everything on this list feels about right. Like, artillery is harder to get out, but once it's out, it still dominates the game. Like,
yeah. I was for a moment I was thinking about putting Kembuggy on the top tier, but then it's like if you play against good Predator decks, it's probably not that oppressive. Like there are some matchups is really great, and then other matchups is just not you don't really want to build that many of them. Yeah.
I might be underrating laser drones, but I underrated flames. Yeah, these should be up here.
Yeah, flames should probably move up at least one.
Yeah,
maybe two. But then again,
I'm
I don't know
seeing
if I
people
want to.
just throwing them in their deck.
I don't know if I would play flame, like put flames over fanatics unless.
I think they're about equal, honestly. I would maybe even. Well, let's just put it. I'd say just put it in the.
I think if you're playing an Inferno deck, you probably want fanatics. If you're playing a deck that doesn't really need the boosts, then you probably want to play flames now.
Yeah. I'd probably put these both right here. I'd say they're about equal, honestly. The flames are better overall. Like they take less thinking. They answer infantry better, especially mutants. They're beefier, so they can hold pads. But the fanatics have better synergy with basically every unit. So the one thing I'd say right now that fanatics don't have going for them is that the map pool is kind of garbage for them.
Yeah, that's an issue with many synergy units.
You want open maps like the Giga style maps like open water, where you want the pads to be touching basically, so you can stack your fanatics in a line and drive units through them over and over, and then other units are forced to engage in the concave, so the boosts affect the fanatics.
I do think maybe Rockworm can go up one tier, because if people are going to be playing less shades and orcas.
Yeah, I've been seeing Alicia have good results with it too. I think her Inferno results have been insane though, like 97 or 98% win rate.
And I'm honestly not sure about Flame Tank because it's really good against heavy infantry, but also you're really not going to be using it against GDI at all.
There's a lot of heavy tanks right now. This is the deck I run with Flame Tank. I don't know how good it is yet, but basically I run. Just gonna use this.
We're not like the others.
Boyka ready to roll.
Is this it? Yeah, I think this is it here.
Powering up my band.
I run this deck here where the idea is you open the wheels and you have a decent war factory to work with, stealth tank boost to deal with air, and then you notice you don't have any lasers here. If they go heavy war factory, you have the mutants to kind of just spam and rely on, and you can double harv at any point and go flame tank and base rush them. And I've been noticing this deck is it seems to be doing pretty well against your average player. I guess maybe against, like, I haven't really faced a lot of predator players so with this deck, but I could see maybe it's struggling there.
I think air spam and predator are both going to be a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
Just your opponent building a ton of drones for him is going to be a huge nightmare.
But I think if you go double harvester, even, I mean, the potential to outplay still exists, right? Like, cause you can use the flame tank to clear shocks. First you use the wheels to do that, and then you switch to the flame tank, and then you had the mutants to deal with the predators afterwards. But I don't know. It's an experimental deck. I haven't tested its metal super hard yet, and this is like the number one mystery of the patch, in my opinion, is tech. How good is tech still? Because not a lot of players that I would rate good tech players are playing it, and then the players who are good enough to play it typically they absolutely just avoid playing it because they don't like playing tech. I said that wrong. Basically, the players who are good tech players, they're not playing in the top 100 right now. They're either just not motivated enough to be there, or there's some reason they don't want to be there. With the exception of, like, you still see Econ, you still see Alicia. She's a big tech player that's still making it work.
I think the Korean guy is also still playing.
Yeah, you have Binding Cube. He's really good with his disruptor zones. And there's one other, the exclamation mark guy. He's doing pretty decent with it too. There might be someone I missed.
It's hard to say. I can't say I feel like playing tech right now, but yeah.
I mean, I won't play it because I feel it's just too slow for me. It was too slow before the patch. It's absolutely gonna be too slow now. But it's not because of the changes. I just don't enjoy the play style. It's just a question of how viable or unviable is it now that changes have gone through, and it'd be interesting to see how people deal with it. You know, the veterans of tech who love. I mean, we're not seeing like Bobby Boucher, right? Who loves tech, pushing into the top 100, even though he's definitely capable of doing it. So we don't have a strong yardstick to measure it by, I guess. There's not enough people trying it, I feel.
No, but I do think that's something we'll figure out over the coming months. As people settle in on their meta deck. Like, if the meta deck for GDI becomes Predator tank, then we may see Titan coming back. Because Titan completely shits on Predator tank.
What do you think of the commander tiers here? Actually, I'll move this down here again.
Yeah, obviously, again, a little bit hard to say. I think Kane is probably... I would probably put it one lower. Not because Kane is bad. Like, Kane is really good in a War Factory-based meta. But shoving down 110 Tiberium on a zoning mechanic is actually really hard to do.
I submitted a replay. Let's watch it real quick. But basically, I noticed that exact thing happened, and oh, my window's a little bit small. I think we're done looking at this, I guess, because there's not.
Yeah. Besides that, I think Steph is probably still God tier. It kind of depends on the meta as we go.
Establishing battlefield control.
But basically, exactly what you said happened in this game. I mean, just watch how hard I win this rifle war. So I'm half a rifle squad ahead at this point. I'm now one rifle squad ahead. I'm now 1.5 ahead. I'm now 2 ahead. I can't pause. So I did this too late. I wanted to kill the Chuggy. I should have done it when I scouted the Chuggy here. I should just drop the obelisk blind. He would have seen it. He would have backed off with a Chuggy. I would have lost 110 Tiberium. He would have lost nothing, but I would have won the missile because it's mostly charged. And he would have backed off, and he wouldn't have been able to afford anything. He can't afford another tech switch. So I have complete control of the pad. But that's really unintuitive gameplay, right? Because I'm spending 110 just to win the missile and not kill anything with it. But
and actually, you could have afforded it just slightly before this happened.
Yep. But what you're going to see here is he's going to end up winning the missile, even though I won the rifle war really hard. And he wastes 2 boosts. Because I still ended up spending an extra 50 to kill a Chuggy and a couple militant models. I can't do anything else after this point. So, I mean, you see the point here is like, this is why I kind of agree that Kane is actually really insane against like Predator and all these other units. Because it one-shots them, and I still think it's going to be a great pick into this meta. But overall, I definitely could see it being like in between OP and maybe OP because you're having to, in a reduced economy situation, you're having to place it in a weird situation that you're not going to get maximum value from it. You're not going to get full value return, and then you might fall behind on your economy as a result.
Yeah, I think the problem is you have to spend a few extra seconds waiting on units if you want to save up that money. And those delays in your unit production to get the obelisk to have enough money to build it will mean you get pushed off the pads. And if you get pushed off the pads, then obviously the obelisk will not possibly change that situation, because if there's like a Chuggy and a laser squad, then yeah, you can snipe the Chuggy, but then you still get blocked off by the laser squad.
Yep.
So I think those tiny delays may end up adding up. I have to play more of it. Like, I'm currently playing the Chuggy Tick Tank deck with Banshee instead of Phantom. And I did have one instance where my opponent built a Predator tank before I had a Tick tank on the pad, and they had like shock troopers. But I had to wait like 10 seconds with this Tick tank kind of in the back and be like, okay, now I can pop the tower, now I can snipe the Predator tank, and now I can move in. But I had to stall the pads, like I had to dance off my back pad to make sure I could actually afford that tower, and then subsequently also afford the units that would take that pad alongside the Tick tank. So I think, yeah, hard to say, but I think it might go down a tier based on that.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. All right, well, it's been a pretty good interview, I think. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to share here? Closing on 2 hours now.
No, yeah. So like I said, I'm pretty happy with this patch. I am kind of hoping that Nod can now finally kind of beat Air to some degree. Like we don't have to. Our opponent won't just go blind Talon into our Nod deck and know that we wouldn't be able to do anything about it. The combination of the new Banshee, meta shifts, economy changes, hopefully will change that in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I hope for GDI that I hope we see more than one deck, really. I hope Borka can maybe make some type of comeback.
Definitely
maybe,
be map dependent.
Maybe
if anything.
Maybe MLRS that it's not just only Predator decks. Things like Mohawk. I hope Mohawk can return. Because if we get units if we get more anti-vehicle units for GDI, besides Predator tank, I think that will change a great deal.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I'm personally pretty happy. I know some people aren't. And obviously, this is like my 2 weeks in opinion. This might change over the course of the next 8 months or 10 months.
Yeah, I'm sure by 8 months, anyone could grow to hate this. Yeah. As with any patch, it will grow stale, and
I think this is most significant change we've had since the missile timer change. And also, I think someone made a report of the top 25 decks recently, and the diversity in units in that is actually quite insane.
Yeah.
Like, I think everything was sitting, almost everything sitting around between 20 and 30%. So.
Yeah, I've seen people dropping the Banshee, though. It seems like they're not. There's a general feeling of it being meh when it seems pretty balanced overall.
I think dropping it because it doesn't fit your deck is much better than dropping it because you know it's trash.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to look at it.
And I do think there's definitely decks where you'd rather have just a stealth tank and not have to worry about opening an air tower at all. And similarly, there will be decks where you maybe rather have like Phantom, like you want to play like Phantom Shade or something. So yeah, no, also yeah, I'm pretty happy. I'm curious where the meta is gonna go.
Yep.
I'm gonna continue trying to play Orca Bomber until I eventually submit into the Predator deck concave.
Yeah, that'll be great.
And then for not, I'm really not sure.
I'm such a meta hipster. Like I always pick the meta that I feel counters the current meta, but I never play the OP units that everyone else is playing.
I was gonna say I didn't see you playing artillery, did I?
No.
So yeah.
Artillery is kind of a pain to get out for me. I just can't do it. But thank you for coming on to do this. Hopefully we can do it again in 8 or 9 months or sooner if they figure out what they're doing.
Maybe we'll get an emergency patch in 4 months.
That would be great, man. And I look forward to your official tier list with the Blade crew.
I'm gonna have to pester him. But obviously, Blade doesn't know what the meta is currently, so I don't know.
I don't blame him. You should.
I don't know.
Definitely be cautious. It's map dependent and it's time dependent. It's always random how people stumble on the right deck, right? So. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I assume in the next 2 months we'll probably start making a tier list. Obviously, I can't speak for him. He's the one that makes it, so I'm just there to give my opinion and say Stealth Tank is S tier and call it a day. Well, I guess not anymore, but
Yeah.
Literally every fucking tier list we had until this patch, I was like, "Oh, stealth tank is on the list. Can we put it in S?" And almost everyone was like, "No."
Yeah, that's funny because
So-
his tune changed when the patch came out. He's like, yeah, maybe it was kind of S tier.
Yeah, that was
Kinda.
funny how he admitted that maybe it was like the nerf was so significant, and he's still playing it with great success. Like, oh, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it was too good.
All right, man.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming
having me.
on. Yep,
Yeah, no
definitely. I'll catch you around.
We'll see each other maybe at some point.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not, because I don't want to lose my medals.
All right.
Cheers, man. Take it easy.
Peace out.